Welcome to the Full Moon TV Buff, episode T9. We're going to discuss the first 3 seasons of Being Human, which ran from 2009 through 2011, since I wanted to cover the entirety of George and Mitchell's stories. I watched this on Amazon Prime and Fandor. I did watch this when it first came out. Buckle up, Wolfpack. This is a longer episode that covers everything. I will also release a multi-part series over the next few days that tackles the same material in smaller bites if you prefer that. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. The showrunner is Toby Whithouse. Prominent directors include Colin Teague, Charles Martin, Toby Haynes, Kenneth Gleanan, and Alex Pillai. Prominent writers include Toby Whithouse, Lisa McGee, Rachel Anthony, and Tony Bascalop. Creature effects designs were by Neil Gordon, Rob Mayer, and Millennium Effects. Special effects supervisor was Mark Turner. Toby Whithouse was a comic book fan in his youth, particularly the work of Alan Moore, which inspired him to study art and design before transitioning into acting and writing. His first professional work was on the '92 TV movie A Masculine Ending. Whithouse's breakthrough came with his creation of the comedy drama series No Angels. Being Human is his highest profile success, becoming a cult favorite and showcasing his talent for blending horror, comedy, and drama. His most prominent acting role is probably in the Bridget Jones' Diary franchise. As a writer for Doctor Who, Whithouse wrote episodes during the David Tennant, Matt Smith, and Peter Capaldi eras, and also penned the Torchwood television story, Greeks Bearing Gifts. In an interesting full circle moment, he played a German soldier in the Doctor Who Christmas special, Twice Upon a Time, in 2017. Colin Teague is particularly known for his work on science fiction television. I found a claim that he is the only one to have directed episodes of Doctor Who and both its spin-offs, Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures. Beyond the Doctor Who universe, Teague has directed episodes of popular British series including Being Human, Holby City, Hustle, The White Queen, and Spotless. His feature film work includes Dragonheart 3, The Sorcerer's Curse. Charles Martin's career began in children's television, where his debut drama, The Giblet Boys, won the BAFTA for Best Children's Drama. He followed this success with My Life as a Puppet. His most notable work includes directing for the acclaimed youth series Skins. Transitioning into adult drama, Martin directed episodes of Wallander and Run. He helped create the Marcella franchise, helming the first 2 seasons. Martin got into feature films with Smart Chase in 2017. Toby Haynes' career began in 2003 with the short film Lost and Found. Haynes gained prominence directing episodes of Doctor Who during the Matt Smith era, including memorable episodes like The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. He then directed The Reichenbach Fall, the audacious finale to Series 2 of Sherlock that ignited a media frenzy and was voted the best ever episode of Sherlock by Radio Times readers. His work on Black Mirror has been particularly celebrated, including the episode USS Callister and its sequel. Other notable projects include Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Most recently, Haynes has been directing the Star Wars series Andor for Disney+, including an Emmy nomination. His extensive TV work includes episodes of Being Human, Spooks Code 9, The Musketeers, and Wallander. Kenny Gleanan's breakthrough came with his film Summer. His television portfolio includes directing episodes of popular series such as Being Human, Paranoid, DCI Banks, New Tricks, and Case Histories. Recent work includes the feature film Dirt Road to Lafayette and the series Acceptable Risk. Alex Pillai got his start directing British television, including popular series such as Being Human, Merlin, Midsummer Murders, Bull, and Bridgerton. Pillai has also directed extensively in the United States, with notable work including Emergence, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Walker, Riverdale, and Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. Recent work includes directing a trio of episodes of Doctor Who. Elizabeth Lisa McGee is best known as the creator and writer of the brilliant Derry Girls. The series became a breakout hit, exploring the lives of teenage girls growing up in Northern Ireland during the 90s against the backdrop of the Troubles. Prior TV writing credits include Being Human, The White Queen, The Deceived, and Raw. Rachel Anthony is known for her work on Lucky Man, Mistresses, and Crossing Lines. Tony Bascalop got a few minor jobs before writing 43 episodes for EastEnders. His next major job was writing on Hotel Babylon. Other prominent gigs include Inside Men, What Remains, and The Consultant. He's probably most well known for writing and creating Servant. Neil Gordon specialized in animatronics and prosthetics. He entered the industry at the age of 17 and has an impressive filmography. Limiting myself to only his major projects, He's worked on Nightbreed, Saving Private Ryan, Judge Dredd, the 1995 version, Children of Men, and Ex Machina. On television, he's worked on both the original Doctor Who and the modern regeneration. Other notable TV projects include Silent Witness, Little Britain, Jekyll, Red Dwarf, Foundation, and Halo. We'll see Gorton's work again when we get to The Wolfman in 2010. Beyond his production work, Gorton is a major figure in prosthetics education. Neil is founder and co-director of multi-award-winning film industry prosthetics company Millennium FX. Founded in 2003, Gorton Studio is Europe's original prosthetics and makeup effects school. As well as offering comprehensive online courses, Gorton Studio is now partnered with Falmouth University to deliver a master's degree in prosthetic effects. He also publishes Prosthetics Magazine, further establishing his role as a leading educator and advocate for the craft. Rob Mayer has clearly worked with Neil Gorton for most of his career. Rob is known for Ex Machina, The Titan, and Gladiator. Notable TV jobs include Call the Midwife, Silo, and Doctor Who. We'll see him on The Wolfman as well. Mark Turner is a prolific special effects supervisor. He's known for TV shows like Teachers, Midsummer Murders, Broadchurch, The White Princess, Poldark, and The Widow. Notable films include 24-Hour Party People, Severance, Big Nothing, and Victor Frankenstein. He also has carved out a niche doing special effects for big real-world events like the London 2012 Olympic opening ceremonies and the royal wedding of Prince William and Princess Catherine. The regular cast includes Russell Tovey as George Sands, Aidan Turner as John Mitchell, Lenora Critchlow as Annie Sawyer, and Sinead Keenan as Nina Pickering. She was recurring on season 1, regular on season 2. Russell Tovey began his career as a child actor. Tovey's breakthrough came with his stage work. He's done films like voicing a character in The Pirates, Band of Misfits, or appearing in The Muppets Most Wanted or The Good Liar. But his most significant work has been on television. Besides playing the werewolf George Sands on Being Human, he's had parts in Him and Her, multiple Doctor Who-related projects, superhero Ray Terrell on various DC TV live action and animated shows, Quantico, an American Horror Story. Aidan Turner was a successful ballroom dancer before getting into acting. His first major roles were The Clinic and Desperate Romantics. His breakthrough role came as the vampire John Mitchell on Being Human. This role brought him to the attention of Peter Jackson, who cast him as the dwarf Killy in the Hobbit trilogy. Turner achieved international stardom playing the title character in the period drama Poldark, a role that established him as one of Britain's most recognizable leading men. More recently, Turner has appeared in the crime drama The Suspect and the period comedy drama Rivals. While researching Turner, I found he plays a werewolf in The Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, which was not on my master list. Let me know if his role is big enough that I should add to it. Lenora Critchlow broke into acting with small roles in the made-for-TV movie Bella and the Boys. Her breakthrough came as Maria Sugar Sweet in the comedy drama series Sugar Rush. She then played ghostly Annie Sawyer on Being Human. Other TV work includes the film Burton and Taylor, sci-fi series Black Mirror, sitcoms Back in the Game, A to Z, and Avenue 5. Her younger sister, Amanda Critchlow, is also an actress and production coordinator. As a child, Sinead Keenan wanted to be a lawyer because she loved the U.S. legal drama Matlock. But eventually, she realized she actually just wanted to play the part of the lawyer. Her breakthrough was playing werewolf Nina Pickering on Being Human. Other notable roles include Moving Wallpaper, Doctor Who, Little Boy Blue, Three Families, and Unforgotten. Her younger brother and sister, Rory and Grain, are also actors. I'm probably pronouncing Grain wrong. All right, notable guest stars include Jason Watkins as William Herrick, Dylan Brown as Seth, Annabelle Scholey as Lauren Drake, Sama Goldie as Janie Harris, Greg Chillen as Owen, Claire Higgins as Josie, Charlene McKenna also as Josie, Donald Sumter as Kemp, Lindsay Marshall as Lucy Jaggett, Paul Reese as Ivan, Amy Manson as Daisy, Rebecca Cooper as Kara, Ian Poulston Davies as Chief Constable Wilson, Lucy Gaskell as Sam Danson, Robson Green as Anthony McNair, Michael Socha as Tom McNair. He was recurring in season 3. He'll become a regular in seasons 4 and 5. Aaron Richins as Detective Inspector Nancy Reed. Paul Casey played the werewolf George, and Rory Mears is the werewolf Tom. Jason Watkins began working on the stage with the National Theatre Company, which provided the foundation for his later success on television and film. Watkins debuted on EastEnders. Other notable TV appearances include Trolleyed, W1A, The Crown, and McDonald and Dodds. His career-defining performance came in the 2-part drama The Lost Honor of Christopher Jeffries, for which he won the BAFTA TV Award for Best Actor. Watkins' film roles include the film series Nativity and character parts in Confetti, High Hopes, Bridget Jones, The Edge of Reason, Tomorrow Never Dies, The Golden Compass, and Wild Child. More recently, Watkins voices Alfred Pennyworth in the animated series Batman, Caped Crusader. Beyond portraying Seth on Being Human, Dylan Brown has also appeared in Unleashed, Three Kings, Centurion, EastEnders, and Midsummer Murders. Annabelle Scully has performed extensively on the stage and is known for her role of Lauren on Being Human. Other prominent projects include The Salisbury Poisonings, The Split, The Sixth Commandment, and Dead and Buried. She also played the leading role in the film Walking on Sunshine. Sam Goldie is known for EastEnders, Thorn, Sleepyhead, and Doctors. Greg Chillen made his movie debut in A Good Year. Chillen is notable for his role as ruthless vampire Domenico in A Discovery of Witches. He has an extensive TV career, including Da Vinci's Demons, Inside Men, and Waking the Dead. More recently, he appeared on The Wheel of Time. Beyond live-action work, he provided the voice of Ron Weasley in several of the Harry Potter video games. Greg recently retired from acting to focus on writing and directing. Claire Higgins' most notable film roles include Hellraiser, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, Cassandra's Dream, and Ready Player One. Prominent TV parts include The Citadel, Rogue, EastEnders, Doctor Who, Silent Witness, and The Worst Witch. While Charlene McKenna has done film, she is much better known for her work on television, including roles in Raw, Misfits, Ripper Street, Bloodlands, and Vienna Blood. Donald Sumter's credits include 3 appearances in Doctor Who, first clear back in 1968, most recently in 2015. The Black Panther, Bleak House, The Queen's Nose, Great Expectations, Nicholas Nickleby, Enigma, K-19, The Widowmaker, The Constant Gardener, Ultramarines, the movie, Black Mirror, Game of Thrones, Jekyll and Hyde, Les Miserables, Chernobyl, and The Phoenician Scheme. After appearing on Midsummer Murders, Lindsay Marshall gained early recognition in film with her performance in The Hours. Her breakthrough TV role came as Cleopatra on Rome. Other notable film work includes Trespass Against Us and Hereafter. Recently, Marshall can be seen in Insomnia and in the feature films Restless and Up the Catalog. Paul Reese trained horses in his youth. His first film was Absolute Beginners in 1986. His next film role was in Lionheart. Other prominent films include Vincent and Theo, Chaplin, From Hell, Hellraiser, Deader, Napoleon, and Saltburn. Running parallel to Reese's film work has been a notable television career, working in productions including A Dance to the Music of Time, The Heroes, Anna Karenina, The Deal, Beethoven, Borgia, The Assets, Turn, Washington's Spies, and Victoria. He has made a minor industry out of playing vampires on Being Human, A Discovery of Witches, and as Vlad, the Prince of Wallachia, aka Dracula himself, in Da Vinci's Demons. Amy Manson's first notable role was in horror sequel Pumpkinhead 4: Blood Feud. Her first television roles were in The Bill and My Family. She gained wider recognition with her performances in Torchwood and Casualty. Her role as Merida in fantasy drama series Once Upon a Time brought international recognition. Rebecca Cooper has a relatively modest filmography, primarily in the late 2000s and early teens. She is known for Forget Me Not and The Little House. Ian Poulston Davies is best known for his role on the soap opera Coronation Street. Most of his work has been on television, including Vincent, Ghost Boat, Conviction, and Funland. He starred in long-running dramas such as EastEnders, Holby City, The Bill, Hollyoaks, and Brookside. His more recent work includes Pennyworth, The Origin of Batman's Butler, Marcella, Tin Star, The Responder, and The Confession. Poulston Davies has also worked as a writer and director, creating award-winning works, some of which were inspired by his ongoing struggles with OCD. Lucy Gaskell's breakthrough role was in Cutting It. Since then, she has appeared in many television dramas, including The A Word, Being Human, Misfits, and Crossing Lines. She appeared in one of the best Doctor Who episodes of all time, Blink. Robson Green first made his name on Casualty, but soon gained national prominence on Soldier Soldier. In 1995, one episode called for Green and co-star Jerome Flynn to sing Unchained Melody. The song was so popular that the pair were persuaded by Simon Cowell to release it as a single. It stayed at number 1 for 7 weeks in the UK singles chart, selling more than 1.8 million copies and making it the best-selling single of the year. Their first album, the self-titled Robson and Jerome, became the best-selling album of the year. Thankfully for British mystery fans around the world, Green went on to star in Touching Evil, Grafters, and Wire in the Blood prior to landing his current role in Grantchester. Beyond acting, as a fishing enthusiast, Green has hosted a number of series, including Extreme Fishing with Robson Green, and later Robson's Extreme Fishing Challenge. I recognized Erin Richards from her breakthrough role as Barbara Keene on Gotham, where she portrayed a character who evolved from Jim Gordon's fiancée to one of the show's most unpredictable villains. Being Human was an early prominent role along with Breaking In. She can also be seen on The Crown. Richards is also a director and writer, getting her start directing an episode of Gotham before moving on to Everything I Ever Wanted to Tell My Daughter About Men. Paul Casey is a physical performer specialized in playing monsters and creatures in science fiction TV and films. He is an actor, singer, and dancer with skills in gymnastics and contortion, proving valuable for his specialized roles. He's best known for his extensive work in the Doctor Who universe, where he played numerous alien creatures, including Cybermen, the Cyber Controller, Cyber Leader, Slitheen, Uod, and many others across Doctor Who, Torchwood, and the Sarah Jane Adventures. Beyond television, Casey has appeared in notable films, including 28 Days Later in 2002, Rogue One, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. Ruari Mears also specializes in physical performance and creature work. He is known for the Sarah Jane Adventures, Doctor Who, and Being Human. I'm going to talk about Michael Socha next episode when I cover the final 2 seasons, where he is promoted to series regular. I highly recommend this series. It balances horror elements with genuine character development and dark humor. Being Human offers a very fresh take on classic monsters by focusing on their struggles to maintain humanity in a world that doesn't understand them and justifiably fears them. And boy, howdy, do we have a lot of metaphorical and thematic meat to chew on here. Feel free to stop this video, watch the first 3 seasons, and come back when you're ready to get into it. The basic premise of Being Human sounds like the opening of a joke that's looking for a punchline. A vampire, a werewolf, and a ghost share a house in Bristol and attempt to live normal human lives. But the show is certainly not a sitcom. The trio battles their supernatural natures, they battle being exposed, and external threats from the supernatural community. So here, let's cover the core characters. John Mitchell is a 116-year-old vampire trying to abstain from blood and fighting his addiction. He really wants to, but he just cannot give it up. His charismatic personality masks deep trauma from decades of violence. He became a vampire as a soldier during World War I. He's a real ladies' man and very charismatic. He also had darkness in him even before he became a vampire. Ultimately, Mitchell is a villain who wanted to be a hero. George Sands is a highly intelligent, neurotic werewolf who painfully transforms every full moon. Lycanthropy destroyed his prior life, and he struggles with intense self-loathing and self-doubt. George is devoutly Jewish, even if he doesn't feel worthy of participating. He is a deeply good man and friend, although his loyalty only gets him into trouble. George is excited to become a father, and he speaks 6 languages. Annie Sawyer is a ghost, initially tethered to the house where she was murdered. Originally timid and unsure of her abilities, she grows stronger as she uncovers the truth about her death. She solves her own murder. She's an incurable romantic, which gets her into trouble a lot. She has terrible taste in men, and that includes Mitchell. William Herrick was a German officer and a vampire who turned Mitchell in the Great War. He is charismatic and dangerous leader of the vampires in and around Bristol, and he has delusions of greater power. He is ruthless and sadistic. Nina Pickering begins as George's human love interest, but becomes entangled in the supernatural world as a werewolf. She's a nurse. She suffered severe burn trauma at some point in her life, which affects her relationships. Her mother physically abused Nina, and she's terrified that she won't be a good mother. Kemp is an older gentleman, balding with a fringe of white hair. He is a devoutly religious zealot, and he knows he's fighting for God and good. He's prepared to make sacrifices of others for the greater good. He is trying to save werewolves' souls and eradicate vampires and ghosts, as he views them as creations of the devil. He is a very orderly man. Lucy Jaggett moves to Bristol after a bad breakup. She's a doctor and is the source of the scientific theory explaining the existence of supernatural creatures. She is an ally of Kemp, although she does see the flickering goodness inside some members of the supernatural community. Tom McNair is a younger werewolf. He's traveling with his presumed father, the man who killed his birth parents, turned him into a werewolf, but also cared for him deeply. Tom craves social contact, but is a bit awkward thanks to his unorthodox upbringing. He is the most adjusted to his lycanthropic state since he grew up with it. So now we're going to cover the episodes. Season 1, Episode 1, Flotsam and Jetsam. This pilot wastes little time establishing the basic premise. Vampire Mitchell and Werewolf George rent a house together and try to live normal lives. Ghost Annie died in that house, and her spirit cannot easily leave, so she becomes the third roommate. Mitchell recently fell off the wagon in his attempts to remain abstinent from blood. As a result, he created a new vampire, Lauren, who wants to punish Mitchell. George struggles to protect humanity from his monthly transformation into an uncontrollable monster. Episode 2, Tully. This episode opens with a chilling description of George's lycanthropic transformation, which I will read in full later. Another werewolf with questionable motives named Tully mentors George. While it starts out good, Tully is ultimately a predatory monster in human form as well. So werewolves and vampires are assholes as a general rule, and both George and Mitchell must fight their dark natures. Tully created George and is desperate for the social support that George has. Episode 3, Ghost Town. Mitchell introduces Annie to a ghost named Gilbert, who helps her understand her capabilities and limitations. She's stuck because something about her life or death needs resolving. Meanwhile, George starts dating a coworker named Nina. Lauren is spiraling and Mitchell agrees to help her. Annie's fiance, Owen, who's also the boy's landlord, finally sorts out the plumbing situation, revealing he killed Annie in the process. Lauren returns to Herrick and the other vampires. Episode 4, another fine mess. Things kick into high gear. Annie reacts to learning her fiance killed her by manifesting poltergeist powers. Mitchell befriends a young boy, Bernie. A DVD mix-up sees Mitchell send home a vampire porn snuff film with Bernie instead of a Laurel and Hardy movie. Now the neighborhood thinks Mitchell is a pedophile. Mitchell and George face a focused campaign to drive them out. Owen plans to evict the boys and move in himself. George obsesses over his new relationship, but the scandal convinces him that he should dump Nina before she learns the truth about him. Everything escalates until Bernie is hit in a car accident. Mitchell offers Bernie's mom the choice. Let her son die, or let Mitchell turn him into a vampire. She chooses the latter. Mitchell ends the episode by rejoining the vampires. Annie decides to become an angel of vengeance and justice. Only George remains committed to being human. Episode 5, Where the Wild Things Are. George summons Owen to the flat where Annie springs her trap. It doesn't have the impact that she was hoping for since he's a real sociopath. Annie warns Owen's new girlfriend, but he manipulates both women. Herrick and the other vampires welcome Mitchell back with open arms. Mitchell runs into Josie, a mortal woman that he dated back in the 60s. Mitchell offers to save her life by making her a vampire. She's dying of lung cancer. Mitchell uncovers the vampire's feeding stock. Herrick plans to kill Mitchell when George and Annie try to rescue him. They don't do very well, but Lauren saves the day, staking Seth and providing an escape route. Then she begs Mitchell to kill her. She can't live the life of a vampire. Annie, now with the boys as scary supernatural support, confronts Owen again, whispering a secret so terrifying it drives him mad. We never learn what the secret is. This accomplished, her door to the afterlife appears. There is a tearful goodbye before Herrick interrupts the proceedings by staking Mitchell and throwing everything into chaos. Episode 6, Bad Moon Rising. Mitchell met George when Mitchell saved him from a vampire beating. George gets Mitchell to the hospital. Annie won't enter her door while Mitchell hangs in the balance, and it closes. Josie willingly gives her blood to Mitchell to allow him to recover. Herrick threatens George. Mitchell offers himself to Herrick in exchange for George and Annie being left alone. Of course, Herrick plans to double-cross them. Annie takes the showdown as an opportunity to free the vampire's feeding stock. George pretends to go along with Mitchell's self-sacrifice, but he's got his own plan. He misdirects Herrick to another location where he locks Herrick in with himself. And tonight is a full moon. Unfortunately, Nina observes this, learns George's little secret, and gets scratched in the process. Oh, and there's a stinger introducing a scientist to his next season's antagonist. Season 2, Episode 1, Cure and Contagion. The vampires of Bristol make George's life miserable as payback for Herrick. Ivan and his girlfriend Daisy take a run at him. Nina tells Annie that she's been scratched, and Mitchell's vampiric senses let him know something's up. Annie gets a job as a pub server. Kemp has a werewolf he keeps in a pressure chamber. He experiments on the poor soul, killing him in the process. While Nina and George both go through the change separately, Annie watches over Nina. George wakes up snuggled next to the half-eaten stag carcass. Daisy seduces George in the forest. George and Nina have an emotional fight that ends when Nina reveals that she is now a werewolf. Daisy visits her daughter, who's dying of old age, and is her last tie to humanity. Kemp's team gets access to the gang's house and puts them under surveillance. Episode 2, Serve God, Love Me, and Mend. Annie obsesses over this guy, Saul, that she met at work. Something uses the TV to convince Saul to tell Annie about his disturbing near-death experience, which closely mirrors her own. It then urges him to sexually assault her. Some powerful forces in the afterlife are pissed that Annie did not pass over. In the end, she realizes nice guy Hugh is better for her. Saul dies in a car crash, and he almost drags Annie through his door. In the end, he can't do it, but Annie is invisible again. Lucy gets a vampire victim at the morgue, whom Mitchell reunites with Carl, the vampire who taught him to live without consuming blood, which rattles Mitchell. If Carl fell off the wagon, can any vampire really quit drinking blood? Mitchell and George cover for Carl, which disgusts Nina. Nina resorts to gallows humor to cope, which George isn't a big fan of. Kemp turns out to be a religious fanatic. In the end, Nina can't handle the supernatural world and leaves George with a note. Episode 3, Long Live the King. George reacts to Nina's leaving with depression. Annie wants to help Hugh get back with his ex as a project and ropes George into helping. The leaderless vampires get careless in their killing. Mitchell assumes leadership of the Bristol vampires to maintain some kind of order and reinstates the previous system to clean up messes. To prevent the short-term exposure and fallout, he covers up killings. The medical examiner reminds Mitchell that ends don't justify means. Mitchell and Lucy finally go on a date. Mitchell gets violent with the vampires to establish dominance. This is not going to end well. George accidentally destroys Kemp's bug. Nina calls to properly break up with George a second time. In a 1-2 punch, we learn Kemp has Nina in his power, and he's working with Lucy, so she knows about Mitchell. Episode 4, Educating Creature. Lucy posited a theory on an evil gene. She convinces the organization not to kill Nina in the pressure chamber. George cages and tranquilizes his wolf in an attempt to live a normal, better life. He gets a job as a language instructor. He speaks 6 languages and has a genius-level IQ. It starts, well, with the wolf sleeping the entire full moon away, but it doesn't stay good. The wolf forces his way out in turrets and rage, leading to George beating his boss half to death. A World War II-era ghost named Sykes saves Annie from getting dragged into the afterlife. He teaches her how to read auras, control electronics, and fight off the other side. Meanwhile, Mitchell starts Blood Addicts Anonymous. It immediately starts going poorly. Episode 5, The Looking Glass. We get a taste of Mitchell's life before he met Josie. She awakened his conscience. He sets up dinner with Lucy, unaware of her connection to Kemp. Lucy and Kemp argue about whether their purpose is to study evil or combat it. The chief constable tries to force Mitchell to kill for him, which knocks Mitchell off the wagon again. He confesses to Lucy, who mirrors his relationship with Josie. George starts dating Sam, a colleague from work. Annie gets roped into babysitting a ghost baby, interesting concept, which starts George spiraling as he thinks about the life that he planned for and has lost. He accelerates his rebound relationship in an unhealthy manner. Episode 6, In the Morning. Kemp was an Anglican priest whose wife and daughter were killed by vampires, so he's honestly earned his hatred of vampires. Annie panics at the very idea of George moving in with Sam. George's lycanthropic condition almost immediately disrupts his new relationship. Surprise. Annie spends the episode getting a washed-up stage psychic, Alan Cortez, back to helping ghosts. Annie gets closure with her mom. Lucy struggles with her faith in Kemp's mission, but ultimately provides intelligence to Kemp, allowing for a major strike. A bomb takes out the funeral home where the vampires gather. Episode 7, Damage. Nina re-enters George's life with big news. She's working with Kemp and offers George a shot at a cure. George is having none of that. Annie believes Kemp can help her move on, but he fails to exorcise her. Mitchell and Daisy are the only survivors of the bomb. Daisy vows vengeance just as soon as she figures out who did it. They start with the coroner, who points them to Lucy, which pushes Mitchell to the same anger level as Daisy. Mitchell falls off the wagon hard. He and Daisy massacre a subway car of people. Evil Mitchell is a psycho. George proposes to Sam and tries to attend a parent-teacher conference, only for confusion over daylight savings time to mean the wolf almost comes out at an elementary school. George traumatizes Sam's daughter for life. That relationship is over. George turns to Lucy and Kemp for the cure. Episode 8, All God's Children. The show goes full horror movie as Mitchell assaults Kemp's facility. Most of Kemp's men die. Kemp even kills one himself to get a door to open so that he can send Annie to the other side. This snaps Mitchell, George, and Nina out of their states and gets them to flee to safety, finally. Lucy tracks them down to try and apologize, but Kemp follows her and kills her for losing faith in his mission. Kemp holds Nina hostage when a door appears for Lucy, except Annie comes through it and drags Kemp back with her. And then Annie appears on a broken television set to tell Mitchell and George she's trapped. The boys vow to rescue her. The season ends with Daisy reviving Herrick. Season 3, Episode 1. Leah, Mitchell, George, and Nina move into a bed and breakfast on Berry Island in Wales. Mitchell hitches a trip through a death's door with a cancer patient to rescue Annie from purgatory. A ghost named Leah takes him on a hit list of his vampiric past sins. She gets him to accept that he's a monster by forcing him to acknowledge just how many people he's killed. She tells him that he will die soon, killed by a wolf-shaped bullet. George runs into another young werewolf while he's preparing for the full moon. George pursues the young werewolf and gets tangled up with some doggers and gets arrested. Nina bails him out just in time. They take refuge in an abandoned church for the monthly transformation and end up engaging in a little werewolf sex. A bunch of vampiric thugs throw an older werewolf into a cage with an innocent man. They arm the man with a knife and then bet on who will win. The wolf is victorious. The two werewolves are father and son. Annie is released and is promised heaven next time she passes through the door. Episode 2, Adam's Family. George and Nina discover a 46-year-old vampire trapped in a teenager's body, feeding on his nearly dead father at the hospital. His name is Adam, and his last parent is dying. They've taken care of him his entire undead existence, which means he's never killed. Meanwhile, a representative of the old ones, ancient, powerful vampires, contacts Mitchell. They fear that his actions in the subway will out all vampires. The old ones' servants accept Adam as their vampiric child, but they are just as depraved as most. All vampires are. In the end, Adam sets out to follow in Mitchell's footsteps and learn to take care of himself. While he passes his first morality test, I am skeptical he'll stay on the straight and narrow based on the behavior of literally every other vampire on the show. Episode 3, Type 4. Mitchell finally realizes that Annie fancies him. While on a midnight walk observing humanity, Annie draws the attention of Sasha, the first zombie we've met on the show. She's rotting and clearly in denial about her condition. Turns out there were 3 other zombies, but scientists vivisected them before incinerating them. They felt pain the entire time. All 4 died about the same time Annie escaped purgatory, so there's some relationship there. Sasha returns to her rugby-playing boyfriend, but he does not respond well. On a girls' night at the club, Sasha begins literally falling apart. Her door comes soon. Meanwhile, Nina is pregnant. She planned to get an abortion and not tell George, which causes some friction when George finds out. Sasha's death inspires Nina to have the baby. Lastly, Mitchell deals with an obsessive vampiric stalker fan. A real single white vampire kind of situation. Mitchell ends up staking him. Episode 4, The Pack. Nina and George try to keep news of the baby a secret while they learn about lycanthropic pregnancy. They find Tom and his dad Anthony from the season premiere. Tom wants to help, but Anthony insists they stay out of it. Anthony and Mitchell keep their burgeoning relationship secret as well. Mitchell has arousal issues, which Annie desperately tries to help with, even suggesting that he pull a one-night stand and she experience the sex through her ghostly powers. That goes spectacularly poorly. Tom tries helping George and Nina, and Anthony finally reveals his story. Unfortunately for everyone, it's a lie. Tom wasn't born a werewolf. His mother wasn't killed by vampires. Anthony killed Tom's parents when he was a baby and turned him into a werewolf. Anthony did raise Tom as his son. Mitchell tries to drive Anthony and Tom off by pointing the vampiric dogfight ring at them. However, Nina and George get scooped up with Tom. Anthony, Mitchell, and Annie stage a rescue. Episode 5, The Longest Day. A sonogram confirms Nina remains pregnant after the monthly transformation. Just when we forgot Herrick, George discovers him in the hospital psych ward. He doesn't know what he is. In the interest of protecting the supernatural world from being exposed, Nina and George take Herrick home. Now, Mitchell insists that they kill him again immediately. He's almost excited about it. George initially agrees, kind of reluctantly, but Nina and Annie only see a vulnerable man who can't remember his past. A social worker shows up to vet releasing Herrick into their custody. Nina bullies the poor, frazzled, overworked social worker to clear up the situation. Nina confronts Mitchell over his bloodlust towards Herrick. Mitchell believes Nina is the wolf-shaped bullet that is going to kill him. George finds the guts to stand up to Mitchell. Herrick finds Mitchell's Box Tunnel 20 scrapbook. He shows Nina, who puts all the pieces together. She anonymously reports Mitchell to the police. Herrick has unknowingly driven a wedge between our 4 heroes. Episode 6, Daddy Ghoul. The guilt of the Box Tunnel 20 massacre sends Mitchell further into a spiral. Detective Inspector Nancy Reed shows up to interview him, but it's pretty clear that the police think this is a dead-end lead. Nina at least can see how dangerous Mitchell and Herrick are becoming. Annie, thinking that she's helping Mitchell, vows to solve the case. Herrick gives Nancy Mitchell's scrapbook. Now, Mitchell gets it back, but draws her undivided attention in the process. George learns his father passed away and sets off to get closure at the funeral. He gets more than he hoped for when he finds that his father is a ghost. His mom left his dad. George is a chip off the old block. George helps his father finish his earthly business, which ends up being him visiting his mother, so George Sr. can pass on. George's mom, Ruth, has hooked up with George's PE teacher. She doesn't take his return as well as her ex-husband did. Only, it turns out George Sr. isn't really dead. He faked his death. George and Nina help him win Ruth back. He tells his parents he's a werewolf, but they just are not ready to hear this. Episode 7, Though the Heavens Fall. It turns out Herrick is responsible for Anthony becoming a werewolf. Anthony was the human victim in a vampire's werewolf cage fight and managed to survive the night and kill the werewolf. But he took a scratch and entered the supernatural world. He and Tom return to recuperate after a clash with vampires. At least, that's the story. Anthony has tracked down Herrick and craves revenge. This time, facing a werewolf, however, Herrick has a knife and emerges victorious. Nancy, with the unwitting help of Annie, zeroes in on Mitchell as the Box Tunnel 20 killer. Just as Annie confronts the reality that Mitchell is the killer, Nancy's boss reveals himself as a vampire who's been covering up the whole thing while looking for another suspect to pin everything on. Annie stakes him and then convinces Mitchell to give himself up when the SWAT team, or whatever they call it in Wales, shows up. After Mitchell is hauled away, Herrick succumbs to his hunger and kills Nancy, and a whole lot of other cops. Drinking blood restores his memory, and he wants revenge on George. He starts by snapping Nina's neck. Finally, now in police custody, Mitchell is exposed as a vampire. Episode 8, The Wolf-Shaped Bullet. Herrick cannot let that happen, so he kills an entire police precinct, destroys all evidence of Mitchell, and breaks them out. Nina is rushed to the emergency room. Annie hitches a trip through a dead cop's door to visit Leah in purgatory. Leah reveals that all of this is so she can serve up judgment on Mitchell. Tom buries his father and sets out to avenge him, even though Anthony specifically asked him not to in his final note. In order to test Mitchell's loyalties, Herrick locks George and Mitchell in the wolf fight cage. It's not the full moon, but when Herrick reveals how Mitchell's reckless actions led to Nina's death, George snaps. Tom shows up to stake Herrick. Mitchell neutralizes George, but George is done being Mitchell's friend. Annie convinces Leah that revenge just hurts more innocents while punishing the target. Leah lets Annie return and miraculously save Nina. Mitchell stakes Herrick. Someone named Edgar Wyndham cleans up the Box Tunnel 20 mess with a patsy. Mitchell shows up begging George to kill him. Mitchell is tired. He knows that he will kill again someday. The hunger always wins. The foursome act the hell out of this confrontation. In the end, Annie kisses Mitchell goodbye, and George agrees to mercy kill him. Wyndham shows up and reveals himself to be one of the old ones who are taking active control of the world. They want Mitchell as their attack dog. Instead, George sets Mitchell free by killing him and declares war on the old ones. Season's 1 arc focuses on establishing the trio's unusual household while Herrick and his vampires plot to conquer humanity. The season culminates in a confrontation between George and Herrick and forces each character to embrace aspects of their supernatural nature that they had been resisting. The primary threat is the supernatural world, dragging our heroes away from their humanity. Season 2 expands the mythology by introducing Kemp's scientific organization with a religious motivation that studies and seeks to cure supernatural beings. Humanity becomes a much more serious threat, pushing our core threesome away, while the supernatural community continues to attack as well. This season explores themes of prejudice, scientific ethics, and whether these beings can truly escape their natures. The season builds to a devastating finale where the boundaries between the supernatural and human worlds are threatened. Season 3's arc focuses on Annie and Mitchell's relationship, Nina's lycanthropic pregnancy, and Mitchell dealing with the fallout of the Box Tunnel 20 massacre. All of the stories revolve around family, healthy and unhealthy versions. Our heroes face their fiercest foes yet, each other. This season seems to definitively confirm that vampires are evil by nature. A wedge has been driven between vampires and werewolves and ghosts. So I guess in the end, Kemp was right. Just a bastard about it. As far as the transformation goes, Let's start with the fact that we get our first werewolf transformation 3 minutes into the pilot. We get a second transformation at 15 minutes, as well as our first decent look at the werewolf. The second season kicks off with 3 transformations: George, Nina, and the test subject. Season 3 ups the ante by doubling the number of werewolf transformations we see, including a fantastic scene with 4 werewolves facing off against at least a dozen vampires. On top of that, several transformations are much longer and more detailed than any seen before. This show is not afraid of showing us its effects budget when it has to. The werewolf transformation sequences in Being Human are noteworthy for their brutal physicality. Unlike a lot of werewolf stories that use quick cuts or shadows, this show portrays George's transformation as an agonizing, bone-breaking process, emphasizing the horror of his condition. Russell Tovey deserves a lot of credit for the anguished screams and noises he makes that sell the compelling visuals. The makeup and practical effects by Neil Gorton and Millennium FX create a visceral experience that makes the audience feel George's pain each month. The second episode opens with a voiceover clinically describing the lycanthropic transformation in a way I have not seen or heard before, which is so amazing that I'm going to quote it here verbatim. He should be dead within 30 seconds. The werewolf heart is about 2/3 the size of a human's, but in order to shrink, first it has to stop. In other words, he has a heart attack. All the internal organs are smaller, so while he's having his heart attack, he's having liver and kidney failure too. And if he stops screaming, it's not because the pain has dulled. His throat, gullet, and vocal cords are tearing and reforming. He literally can't make a sound. By now, the pituitary gland should be working overtime, flooding his body with endorphins to ease some of the pain, but that too is shut down. Anyone else would have died of shock long ago, but it won't let him. And that's the thing I find most remarkable. It drags him through the fire and keeps him alive and conscious to endure every second. Nothing like this could just evolve. This is the fingerprint of God, an impossible, lethal curse spread by tooth and claw. Victim begets victim begets victim. It's so cruel, it's perfect. In the Being Human universe, werewolves transform during the single night of the proper full moon. They cannot control their wolf form, have no memories of what they did in wolf form, and the transformation is excruciatingly painful. The condition is transmitted through scratches or bites, but the typical werewolf attack is so violent and thorough that there are very few survivors. Werewolves and vampires are natural enemies, with werewolf blood being toxic to vampires. Vampires love to pick on lycos, as they call them, and kill them when they are stuck in their human form. But they're no match for a werewolf in their monstrous form. Vampires also use werewolves as cruel dogfights, pitting hapless victims against lycanthropics for gambling and entertainment. The show explores how this monthly trauma affects George's psychology and relationships. There is no mention of silver at all that I can remember, and plenty of examples of steel knives hurting werewolves just fine. So now let's move on to the themes. Just a quick note. This show illuminated a flaw in my planning that will require adjustment going forward. When discussing one of these longer running shows with multiple seasons, I'll need to be more flexible in when to break it into individual episodes. I originally had planned on just covering the first 2 seasons, but once it became clear that George and Mitchell's stories run through the first 3 seasons, it was much more effective to cover it all in 3 seasons in one go. All right, here we go. The genius of Being Human's title lies in its ambiguity. Is it a statement or is it a question? What does it mean to be human when your nature includes something definitively non-human? While all 3 protagonists grapple with identity questions, George's lycanthropy provides the most visceral exploration of divided identity and the struggle to define humanity. Unlike Mitchell's chosen vampirism, or Annie's imposed ghostly state, George's monthly transformation is an involuntary biological imperative that literally tears him apart and reconstructs him into something else. From the beginning, George establishes a clear boundary between himself and the wolf. He consistently refers to his werewolf self in third person, it, the thing, never I. In the pilot, George tells Mitchell, that's not me. What happens at the full moon, that's not who I am. This linguistic separation demonstrates his core psychological strategy for dealing with it: complete disassociation from his lycanthropic identity. This disassociation manifests physically in his transformation rituals. He prepares soundproofed rooms, containment measures, and disposable transformation outfits. He distracts the wolf with chicken scent. These practical measures double as psychological barriers, reinforcing the separation between his human and wolf identities. By containing the wolf, George believes that he can prevent it from contaminating his real self. This divided identity resonates with psychological traditions that recognize the internal multiplicity as a fundamental aspect of human experience. From Freud's structural model to Jung's shadow concept to more modern ones, many frameworks acknowledge that the unified self is largely a construction. George's extreme division represents a pathological extension of the normal compartmentalization that humans use to reconcile contradictory aspects of themselves. Being Human elevates itself among other werewolf stories through its unflinching portrayal of the transformation as excruciating physical trauma. Unlike quick transformations in other works, George's monthly metamorphosis is agonizing, prolonged, and decidedly non-glamorous. The transformations emphasizes George's suffering, bones breaking and reforming, skin stretching, organs shifting, all accompanied by screams of pain. This physical ordeal serves multiple purposes. It emphasizes the involuntary nature of his condition. Unlike Mitchell, who can choose not to drink blood, George has no choice. The breaking of his human form represents the forced reconstruction of his sense of self every month. Beyond creating sympathy, the transformations serve as a metaphor for identity as an embodied experience. Modern philosophy and cognitive science increasingly recognize that our sense of self is inextricably tied to our physical sensory experience. George's transformations radically disrupt this bodily continuity, literally reforming his sensory apparatus and physical capabilities. His brain chemistry, sensory perception, physical strength, and instinctual drives all fundamentally change. And this poses an intriguing question. If identity is partially constructed by our embodied experience, what happens when that embodiment radically changes? George's lycanthropy also affects how others perceive him. Now, in human form, he presents as non-threatening, even meek. Russell Tovey portrays him with a nervous energy, hunched posture, and hesitant speech. This social identity contrasts sharply with the deadly predator that he becomes, creating tension in how George is perceived and what he becomes. This split creates complex relationship dynamics. Mitchell, as a fellow predator, recognizes and even respects the wolf in ways George can't. George's relationship with Nina is most impacted by his lycanthropy, particularly after he accidentally infects her. Their relationship evolves from George's hiding his condition to Nina's horror at discovering it, and eventually to the mutual acceptance of their shared condition. George's encounters with other werewolves, Tully, Anthony, and Tom McNair, present alternative models for integrating lycanthropy into identity. All three of those have accepted the wolf's influence on their human behaviors, but they're highlighting different strategies for managing stigmatized identity. Through these relationships, George's lycanthropy forces everyone to confront some crucial questions. Can we love someone whose identity includes aspects that we fear? Can we be loved if parts of our identity are that dangerous? Lycanthropy is particularly devastating for George because the wolf is everything he fears. It's disorder, impulse, violence, and loss of control. His transformation forces a monthly surrender of his carefully constructed defenses, revealing that order and control are largely illusions, and that human identity necessarily contains chaotic, primal elements that cannot be permanently suppressed. This parallels Jungian psychology's concept of the shadow integration, the idea that psychological health requires acknowledging and integrating disowned aspects of ourself rather than suppressing them. George's insistence that the wolf isn't me is a rejection of shadow integration, a refusal to acknowledge that the primal impulses of the wolf are indeed aspects of his complete identity. George's most self-destructive behaviors stem not from his lycanthropy itself, but from his desperate attempts to deny or suppress it. This portrayal offers a nuanced perspective. Becoming fully human requires acknowledging rather than denying the aspects of ourselves that we find frightening or shameful. The monthly cycle of George's transformations creates a distinctive rhythm to his experience of identity. Again, unlike Mitchell and Annie's permanent states, George experiences this regular oscillation between human and wolf forms. This cyclical experience reflects how identity development functions more broadly. Rather than resolving who am I once and definitively, humans revisit these questions repeatedly through different life stages and circumstances. George's monthly transformations externalize and dramatize this universal experience of identity as an ongoing process rather than a fixed state. The series explores how these cycles affect George's sense of time and planning, reflecting how identity challenging experiences in human life can reorganize one's relationships to time and future planning. A central philosophical question in being human is whether humanity is defined by biological nature or by choices and values. George's lycanthropy places this in stark relief. If he is biologically a werewolf, can he meaningfully claim to be human? The series ultimately suggests that humanity is defined not by biology, but by moral choices and relationships. Mitchell says being human is a choice. George embodies this philosophy through his determined efforts to maintain human values despite his lycanthropic condition, his meticulous preparations to prevent the wolf from harming others, his continued empathy, and his willingness to risk his safety to protect others all demonstrate a chosen humanity that transcends biological determinism. This philosophical position resonates with contemporary bioethical discussions about the boundaries of humanity. As medical technology increasingly allows for biological modification, questions about what constitutes natural humanity becomes increasingly complex. Being human suggests humanity is defined not by biological markers, but by ethical choices and interpersonal connections. Now, in its most sophisticated moments, being human suggests that George's goal shouldn't be eliminating his wolf nature. He can't get rid of what he is, but he can achieve an integrated identity by acknowledging both aspects of himself. The series reveals George's werewolf nature that provides heightened smell, hearing, and toughness that serve as a metaphor for how aspects of ourselves that we fear and might not like might actually offer valuable strengths when properly integrated. As the series progresses, George's wolf nature increasingly manifests not just as destructive impulses, but as powerful protective instincts as well. His fierce defense of friends and family suggests that the wolf's aggression, when channeled toward protection, represents a positive aspect of his identity. George's human persona tends towards repression and conflict avoidance, but his wolf self expresses emotions directly and without constraint. This integration theme aligns with holistic psychological approaches that view healing not as eliminating something unwanted about yourself, but as achieving greater communication and harmony between the different aspects of identity. George's journey suggests that being fully human means that we need to acknowledge our primal, instinctual, biological aspects. We are what we are, and then we choose what to do with that. George's struggle with lycanthropy ultimately reveals that being human isn't a static state, not defined by our biology or our appearance, but an ongoing process of ethical choice, relational connection, and self-acceptance. His journey from rejecting the wolf as not me to strategic integration mirrors universal human struggles to acknowledge and integrate disowned aspects of ourselves. The series suggests several profound insights through George's character. First, identity is not unitary but multiple. All humans contain contradictory aspects threatening to their preferred self-image. Second, humanity is defined by choices, not nature. What makes George human is not the absence of the wolf nature, but his sustained commitment to human values despite that nature. Third, integration is preferable to division. And finally, relationships are central to humanity. George's connections anchor his human identity more effectively than any physical containment of his wolf nature. Through these insights, being human explores identity in ways that transcend its supernatural premise. George's lycanthropy is a powerful metaphor for the universal human experience of containing multitudes. In our increasingly complex modern world, George's struggle offers a compelling framework for understanding how we all navigate the various aspects of ourselves that might seem frightening or contradictory. His journey suggests that being human isn't about the absence of the monstrous potential within us, but it's about the continuous choice to acknowledge that potential while striving for connections, empathy, and meaning. Now, Being Human uses its fantastical premise to explore profoundly human struggles. And while we normally focus on werewolves on this channel, I just can't resist digging into Mitchell's thematic struggle with addiction. John Mitchell is a vampire attempting to abstain from drinking human blood. Through Mitchell's journey, the show creates a compelling metaphorical examination of addiction, relapse, and the complex path to recovery. Blood, Mitchell's substance of choice, is more than a dietary requirement. It's an all-consuming compulsion that fundamentally alters his personality and behavior when indulged. Several aspects of this metaphor particularly resonate with real-world addiction experiences. First, Mitchell experiences blood hunger as both a physical sensation, his eyes darken, his body tenses, and a psychological torment. This dual nature reflects the complex reality of addiction, which operates simultaneously on both physical and psychological levels. As Mitchell explains to George in season 1, it's not just the blood, it's the power, the feeling like you're the most alive thing in the world. Second, when Mitchell drinks blood, he becomes someone else, something more primal, more violent, disconnected from his humanity. This transformation mirrors how substance abuse can create profound personality changes in addicted individuals. In a particularly revealing scene, Mitchell tells Annie, "When I drink, I'm not me anymore. I become something else, something older." This Jekyll and Hyde effect is commonly reported by recovering addicts, describing their behavior while under the influence. Third, Mitchell's relationship with blood follows a recognizable cycle that's familiar to addiction specialists. Abstinence leads to craving. Craving leads to indulgence. Indulgence leads to shame, and shame drives attempts at abstinence, only for the cycle to begin again. After each relapse, Mitchell experiences overwhelming guilt, which paradoxically often drives him toward further consumption as a form of self-punishment or escape, depending. Finally, a crucial aspect of the metaphor is that Mitchell can't be cured of being a vampire. His condition is permanent, and his recovery depends not on eliminating his desire for blood, but on learning to live with it without indulging it, a parallel to the one day at a time philosophy of many recovery programs. Mitchell's attempts at recovery throughout the series highlight several aspects of addiction treatment that mirror real-world experiences. Mitchell's most successful periods of abstinence occur when he has support that provides both accountability and alternative sources of emotional fulfillment. This reflects the importance of support networks in addiction recovery, where isolation often precipitates relapse. As Mitchell tells George, "You keep me human." Mitchell's work as a hospital porter gives him a purpose and a non-vampiric identity, crucial elements in his recovery. His desire to help patients represents an attempt to counterbalance the harm that he has caused, similar to making amends in the 12-step programs. This highlights how recovery often requires more than just abstinence. The recovering addict has to construct a new identity and purpose. Through the series, Mitchell's recovery is threatened by various triggers: the presence of blood, emotional distress, and the manipulation of other vampires. Some of those triggers are external, but many are tied to emotional states or to unresolved traumas, reflecting the complex nature of addiction triggers in real life. In season 2, Mitchell's major relapse comes from his feelings of betrayal and alienation after Lucy's treachery. Other times, Mitchell falls into the trap of believing that he has his addiction under control, leading to situations where he tests his limits and ultimately relapses. This overconfidence is a recognized danger in addiction recovery, where declarations of victory often precede relapses. As senior vampire Herrick warns Mitchell, "You think you've tamed it, but it's just sleeping." One of Being Human's most insightful explorations is how Mitchell's condition affects his relationships. George and Annie become enablers at times, covering for Mitchell and protecting him from consequences of his actions. Their struggle between supporting Mitchell's recovery and enabling his destructive behavior reflects the difficult position of those who love someone with an addiction. Mitchell's relationship with other vampires, particularly Herrick and later Daisy, demonstrate the complicated dynamics of friendships formed around substance abuse. These vampires don't understand Mitchell's desire to abstain and actively undermine his recovery. They see it as a rejection of them personally. Herrick's repeated insistence that Mitchell is denying his true nature parallels how former drinking or using partners often pressure recovering addicts to return to substance abuse. Mitchell's romantic relationships are repeatedly compromised by his addiction, often resulting in his partner's death or in turning them into an addicted vampire like himself. This portrayal captures the difficulty addicted individuals face in maintaining healthy romantic relationships while managing their condition. The vampiric community in Being Human functions as a powerful metaphor for the subculture that often develops around substance use. Among vampires, drinking human blood isn't seen as problematic, but as natural and necessary. This normalization of harmful behavior parallels how substance-using communities often develop norms that frame addiction as normal or even desirable. Actions seen as unethical by humans, like murder, are justified as good by the vampires. As Herrick tells Mitchell, "What you call murder, I call feeding. It's only your human conscience that makes you see it as wrong." Mitchell's attempts at abstinence are met with derision, manipulation, and violence from vampires who see his choices as a threat to their way of life. This hostility towards recovery is a recognized phenomenon in addiction, where those who still actively are using often react negatively to a peer's attempts to get clean, interpreting it as an implicit criticism of their own choices. Throughout the series, other vampires offer Mitchell seemingly reasonable compromises. Look, drink blood, but don't kill. Only feed on willing participants, or let's use transfusion bags instead of live victims. These compromises mirror the controlled using strategies that often fail for those with serious addictions. The show insightfully portrays how these compromises inevitably lead Mitchell back to his most destructive behaviors. Now, perhaps the most difficult aspect of Being Human's addiction metaphor is its exploration of whether redemption and recovery are possible for someone with Mitchell's history of harm. Now, Mitchell has killed hundreds, actually probably thousands, over his century as a vampire. The series embraces the question of whether someone with such a destructive history deserves or can even achieve redemption. And this parallels a difficult question in addiction recovery. How does one come to terms with the harms that they have caused while actively addicted? Throughout the series, even during Mitchell's best periods, the risk of relapse remains constant. This permanent vulnerability reflects the reality that addiction recovery is never complete, but requires ongoing vigilance. As Mitchell tells Annie in season 3, I'm always one bad day away from becoming a monster. Mitchell's attempts to manage his addiction through willpower alone repeatedly fail. It's only when he builds meaningful connections and finds purpose beyond abstinence that he achieves periods of stability. This highlights the importance of connection and meaning in sustained recovery, moving beyond simple abstinence to deeper healing. Mitchell's character arc across the series traces a recognizable path through addiction and recovery. The first season introduces Mitchell as someone actively working on his recovery but still vulnerable. His partnership with George represents an initial support system, and their shared house becomes a space where both can manage their conditions. The season's climax, where Mitchell resists the ultimate temptation to return to killing alongside Herrick, represents his first major victory in recovery. The second season, however, explores Mitchell's catastrophic relapse during the Box Tunnel 20 massacre, where he and Daisy killed 20 train passengers in a blood-fueled frenzy. This relapse comes after Mitchell experiences rejection, isolation, and trauma, common precursors to relapse and addiction. The season unflinchingly portrays both the immediate horror of Mitchell's actions and their long-term consequences for his psyche and relationships. The final season with Mitchell explores the most difficult aspects of recovery, making amends, accepting consequences, and confronting whether some harms are simply too great to overcome. Mitchell's efforts to protect his found family while evading justice for his crimes highlight the complex moral territory of addiction recovery, where genuine remorse must coexist with accountability. Now, Mitchell's ultimate end, asking his friend George to kill him because he knows he will relapse again, represents a tragic acknowledgement of the limits of his recovery and the fatal consequences of falling off the wagon because he's a vampire, right? Not because he's an addict. This is the point at which the metaphor breaks, and we shouldn't read into it that we expect or want addicts to kill themselves. Being Human succeeds because it captures the visceral, compulsive nature of addiction while maintaining empathy for the addicted individual. By using vampirism as its central metaphor, the show explores addiction's darkest aspects, its potential for violence, its destruction of relationships, its resistance to simple cures, without glamorizing substance use or demonizing those who struggle with it. The series ultimately suggests that being human is a continuous effort, a commitment to connection, empathy, and harm reduction in the face of overwhelming compulsions. Mitchell's journey, with its victories, its failures, and its ambiguous conclusion, reminds viewers that recovery is a complex, ongoing process of choosing humanity over destructive impulses, one moment at a time. For viewers in recovery or those who love someone struggling with addiction, Mitchell's journey offers both hope and realism, acknowledging the permanent nature of addiction while affirming that connection, purpose, and the choice to minimize harm matter. Even when recovery remains imperfect, in its supernatural wrapping, Being Human delivers one of television's most human portraits of the struggle against our darkest compulsions. I've never struggled with addiction, and I don't have a loved one who does, so I acknowledge I'm not an expert here. If you have insight, please, please add it. The last thing I want to talk about is found family. Found family is a powerful theme in modern storytelling. It shows that relationships that form outside of blood ties, where people choose to care for each other throughout shared experiences and mutual support. Unlike traditional families that are based on biology or marriage, found families form when people consciously decide to support one another through life's challenges. The TV series Being Human perfectly demonstrates this concept. The show features 3 supernatural characters whose monstrous natures actually help them form deeply human connections with each other. Found families typically emerge when traditional support systems fail. Individuals feel isolated, rejected, or misunderstood by regular society, and this creates a need that can be filled by others who share similar experiences. In Being Human, each character represents a different kind of social outcast. Mitchell is a vampire who preys on humans. George transforms into a dangerous werewolf each month. Annie exists as a ghost, caught between life and death. Their shared apartment is a sanctuary where they can be themselves while trying to stay human despite these supernatural conditions. This pattern appears throughout popular culture. The Chosen shows Jesus' disciples as a found family, united by their calling. Brooklyn Nine-Nine presents a police precinct where coworkers become each other's main emotional support. The Fast and the Furious franchise centers on Dom Toretto's crew, bound by loyalty and mutual protection. Guardians of the Galaxy transforms criminals and outcasts into heroes through their commitment to each other. Now, it's not just found families. Even traditional families are strengthened by shared experiences, as seen in The Haunting of Hill House with the Crane family. Traditional families operate under biological obligation, but they don't start that way. We do choose our partner, even if we can't choose our parents or our children. We don't get to choose all our relatives, we get to choose some of them. And cultural expectations often demand loyalty, regardless of compatibility. Found families do work a little differently, operating through chosen obligations that carry deeper emotional weight, precisely because it stems from a decision rather than accident of birth. Without biological ties, these bonds do require constant cultivation and renewal. They can't rely on genetic programming or on social expectations to maintain themselves during difficult periods. In Being Human, the characters repeatedly choose to stay together despite having opportunities to separate. Mitchell could join vampire communities. George could isolate himself to protect others. And Annie could move on to whatever awaits after death. Being Human explores these vulnerabilities through storylines where external pressures threaten the trio's bonds. Government agencies investigate their supernatural activities. Vampire hierarchies demand Mitchell's loyalty, and Annie's unfinished business creates ongoing instability. Instead, they consciously recommit to their shared household and mutual support, even adding additional members like Nina. This theme appears in other shows too. The crew of Firefly operates as a found family, bound by choice rather than necessity. And the Umbrella Academy presents an interesting hybrid where characters raised as siblings must choose to become a genuine family as adults. Successful found families demonstrate remarkable adaptability, evolving to accommodate changes in memberships, circumstances, and individual needs. Being Human illustrates this through character departures and arrivals, with the core found family structure surviving transitions while maintaining its supportive function. This flexibility distinguishes found families from more rigid structures. While biological families often struggle or can struggle to accommodate members who deviate from expected roles, found families typically form specifically to embrace those differences and provide support for unconditional and more unconventional choices. Found families can also transition into more traditional families, like we discussed. George and Nina begin as a romantic couple and are expecting a child together by the end of season 3. The story as old as humanity itself and the biological family. The popularity of found family narratives in contemporary media reflects broader social changes in how we understand kinship, belonging, and mutual obligation. As traditional family structures become less universal and social mobility increases, more people find themselves distant from their biological relatives. Found family concepts provide models for creating meaningful connections and support systems outside of conventional frameworks. These narratives also challenge traditional hierarchies by demonstrating that these bonds can form horizontally between peers choosing to support each other. I do think traditional family narratives used to be more common. I remember the Waltons, Little House on the Prairie, and the Brady Bunch from my youth. Shows like Modern Family demonstrate that traditional family narratives do continue to remain popular and relevant. Being Human demonstrates that found family relationships can provide that emotional sustenance, moral guidance, and practical support that are traditionally associated with biological kinship, while offering some other additional benefits. The series shows that human capacity for connection extends beyond genetic bonds and can flourish when individuals consciously choose to commit to each other. The show's supernatural framework illuminates universal truths about human connection. We all carry aspects of ourselves that we fear others might reject. Authentic relationships require vulnerability and acceptance, and our greatest strength often emerges through supporting others who share our struggles. Through Mitchell, George, and Annie's chosen family, being human offers hope that belonging is always possible, and that no one is too different or damaged to deserve love and support, and that the families that we choose can provide healing and purpose, even when traditional structures may have failed. In a world where many feel isolated despite constant digital stimulation, these stories remind us that genuine intimacy and mutual care remain not only possible, but they're essential for human flourishing. The monstrous trio's journey towards humanity suggests that we all have the capacity to transcend our darker natures through the transformative power of chosen love and mutual commitment. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing the last 2 seasons of Being Human from 2012 and 2013. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.